The Achaeans constitute one of the collective names for the Greeks in Homer's Iliad and Odyssey. The other common names are Danaans and Argives, while Panhellenes and Hellenes both appear only once. All of the aforementioned terms were used synonymously to denote a common Greek civilizational identity. In the historical period, the Achaeans were the inhabitants of the region of Achaea, a region in the north-central part of the Peloponnese. The city-states of this region later formed a confederation known as the Achaean League, which was influential during the 3rd and 2nd centuries BC. Homeric versus later use. The Homeric, long-haired Achaeans would have been a part of the Mycenaean civilization that dominated Greece from circa 1600 BC until 1100 BC. Later, by the Archaic and Classical periods, the term Achaeans referred to inhabitants of the much smaller region of Achaea. Herodotus identified the Achaeans of the northern Peloponnese as descendants of the earlier Homeric Achaeans. According to Pausanias, writing in the 2nd century CE, the term Achaean was originally given to those Greeks inhabiting the Argolis and Laconia. Pausanias and Herodotus both recount the legend that the Achaeans were forced from the homelands by the Dorians during the legendary Dorian invasion of the Peloponnese. They then moved into the region later called Achaea. A scholarly consensus has not yet been reached on the origin of the historic Achaeans relative to the Homeric Achaeans and is still hotly debated. Former emphasis on presumed race, such as John A. Scott's article about the blonde locks of the Achaeans as compared to the dark locks of Mediterranean Poseidon, on the basis of hints in Homer, has been rejected by some. The contrasting belief that Achaeans, as understood through Homer, bullshit, a name without a country, an ethnos created in the epic tradition, has modern supporters among those who conclude that Achaeans were redefined in the 5th century BC as contemporary speakers of Aeolic Greek. Karl Bellick has suggested there was no Dorian invasion, but rather that the Peloponnesian Dorians were the Achaeans. Edward Meyer, disagreeing with Bellick, has instead put forth the suggestion that the real-life Achaeans were mainland pre-Dorian Greeks. His conclusion is based on his research on the similarity between the languages of the Achaeans and prehistoric Arcadians. William Prentice disagrees with both, noting archaeological evidence suggests the Achaeans instead migrated from southern Asia Minor to Greece, probably settling first in Lower Thessaly, probably prior to 2000 BC. Hittite documents. Emil Forrer, a Swiss Hittitologist who worked on the Bofaskoi tablets in Berlin, said the Achaeans of pre-Homeric Greece were directly associated with the term land of Achaea mentioned in the Hittite texts. His conclusions at the time were challenged by other Hittitologists, as well as by Ferdinand Sommer, who published his Die Archäische Urkunden in 1932. Some Hittite texts mention a nation lying to the west called Achaea. In the earliest reference to this land, a letter outlining the treaty violations of the Hittite vassal Maduwata, it is called Achaea. Another important example is the Tawegalawa letter written by an unnamed Hittite king of the empire period to the king of Achaea, treating him as an equal and implying Miletus was under his control. It also refers to an earlier Wilusa episode involving hostility on the part of Achaea. Achaea has been identified with the Achaeans of the Trojan War and the city of Wilusa with the legendary city of Troy. The exact relationship of the term Achaea to the Achaeans beyond a similarity in pronunciation was hotly debated by scholars, even following the discovery that Mycenaean Linear B is an early form of Greek Greek. The earlier debate was summed up in 1984 by Hans G. Gutterbach of the Oriental Institute. More recent research based on new readings and interpretations of the Hittite texts, as well as of the material evidence for Mycenaean contacts with the Anatolian mainland, came to the conclusion that Achaea referred to the Mycenaean world, or at least to a part of it. Greek mythology. In Greek mythology, the perceived cultural divisions among the Hellenes were represented as legendary lines of descent that identified kinship groups, with each line being derived from an eponymous ancestor. Each of the Greek ethne were said to be named in honor of the respective ancestors: Achaeus of the Achaeans, Danaans of the Danaans, Cadmus of the Cadmeans, Hellen of the Hellenes, Aeolus of the Aeolians, Ion of the Ionians, and Dorus of the Dorians. Cadmus from Phoenicia, Danaus from Egypt, and Pelops from Anatolia each gained a foothold in mainland Greece and were assimilated and Hellenized. Hellen, Graikos, Magnus, and Macedon were sons of Deucalion and Pyrrha, the only people who survived the Great Flood. The ethne were said to have originally been named Graikoi after the elder son, but later renamed Hellenes after Helen, who was proved to be the strongest. Sons of Helen and the nymph Orsis were Dorus, Zuthos, and Aeolus. Sons of Zuthos and Creousa, daughter of Erechthea, were Ion and Achaeus. According to Hyginus, 22 Achaeans killed 362 Trojans during the 10 years at Troy. Genealogy of the Argives. Etymology. According to Margalit Finkelberg, the name Chi Alpha Iota Omicron Iota is derived from Hittite Achaea. However, Robert S. P. Beeks doubted the validity of this derivation and suggested a pre-Greek proto-form *Achaewa. The etymology of Danaoi is uncertain. According to Beeks, the name is certainly pre-Greek.